Hi, I am Jenny and welcome to FREEJOO, the global community of educators. Let me show you why as an educator you should make FREEJOO an important part of your teaching and learning practice. A community of teaching practice is important for any educator. On FREEJOO you will be able to access CollabEd, which is like LinkedIn but for educators. Here you will be able to connect and network with other educators from all around the world. You can build your own community of teaching practice or join one of the many other existing groups and learn and share ideas, lesson plans, etc. with each other. Then, for a more formalized approach to professional development, you can go to SkillEd, which is like Netflix for educators. Here, you will be able to access a wide range of courses designed by global experts that will help you to learn about new pedagogical, technical, and soft skills, all related to 21st century education and the future of work. There are more than 20 courses available for free, and for more advanced level courses, you can upgrade to the Silver membership plan for just $20 per year and get access to all courses designed by Akadasia. The courses are available in English and in several other Asian languages. And what's more, you will receive a free verifiable and tamper-proof digital certificate for each course that you complete. If you have upgraded your membership to the Silver, Gold, or Platinum plans, you also get access to DesignEd, which is like Canva for educators. Here you will find the easiest and fastest way to practice your own instructional design skills and build your own courses. We have pre-integrated several third-party edtech apps like Flipgrid, Canva, Mentimeter, Padlet, H5P, Zoom, etc. right into FREEJOO so you can make your courses engaging and fun for your own learners. As you can see, there is a lot you can do on FREEJOO as an educator. So what are you waiting for? Go to www.freejoo.com and get your very own free lifetime membership today. See you soon on FREEJOO.
Hello and welcome again. Good day to all our friends and viewers from all over the world. Our Akadasia community is 160,000 strong from 35 countries. Of course, most especially our friends from Southeast Asia, our friends from Vietnam, Kam Ang, I hope I'm saying it right. Terima kasih for our friends from Indonesia, and of course Singapore, Malaysia, and all our other countries. And of course our beloved Philippines. Magandang hapon, good afternoon to all of you. And for those of you who are seeing me for the first time, I'm Roy Platon. I'm the co-founder and chief community officer for Akadasia. We are a Singapore-based mission-driven education technology company, and we're here to empower educators everywhere. So we're very happy to have all of you again regularly every Wednesday. We have our weekly fireside chats, our webinar Wednesday, because we want to just, take a little bit of time in the middle of the week to just say hi and hello to each other and to, talk about, relevant topics that, we may find very challenging and need, a discussion point and a discussion group to kind of share ideas about these topics. Obviously, we also accompany all our webinars with an online course that accompanies each webinar. And as you watch this session and you go to our freejoo.com website so that you can enroll in the course, you will earn your e-certificate for completing that course for this session. Okay, so again, our goal here is to empower all of you with different kinds of skills, not just the technology familiarization. Technology skills are important. I'm sure you're using different kinds of edtech tools, but more importantly, also the pedagogy, the manner of teaching. So we have different frameworks and we guide you through those instructional design techniques in the platform. And of course, we include even the skills. And we are talking about, various skills. Some of them, they were known as soft skills. So communication, critical thinking, empathy, those are important skills. But even in, working well with coworkers, a growth mindset, a lifelong learning mindset, all these skills and mindsets are included in our training program. So please come on and join us. Sign up to FREEJOO so that you can actually avail of these courses. Some are free, some are paid. And as you go through the platform, you'll be able to see various uh, uh, s- courses and trainings that you can avail of. All right. So for this week, we have a very interesting topic, and I think it's very important. It's not the easiest to discuss, I have to say, because sometimes as educators, um, when we talk to our students, meet with them daily, we give feedback to them. And this kind of feedback helps shape their thoughts and ideas and behaviors. And sometimes we have to think about what impact this has on our learners. Okay, maybe some of us are actually even teaching adults, or let's say we are doing other webinars and training programs. So depending on the audience you're speaking to, whether they're younger learners or older learners, there's a particular way of providing constructive criticism in a positive way. Okay, so there's always a connotation that we think criticism, it's always negative. And we'll try to kind of clarify that concept. Is it always a negative thing, or is there something positive that can be gained from constructive criticism? You know, when we say constructive, it means it's building up to something, it's leading to something. Okay, maybe it's not always just criticizing for the sake of pointing out negative things. That's probably not just the reason why we provide criticism in the first place. So we'll try to do that in the next hour, hour and a half, to kind of understand these concepts a bit better. And here we will examine the benefits and the challenges of constructive criticism and provide you insights and strategies in giving and receiving constructive criticism properly. Okay, so I hope this can help all of you in your own teaching and, in, of course, in relating with uh, not just your students and learners, but perhaps in your own lives with your family and friends. So I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker today. She's been gracious enough to join us. Um, she is a registered guidance counselor. She finished her Bachelor of Arts English in just 3.5 years, cum laude, from the University of the Philippines in Diliman, Quezon City. Right after college, she actually pursued her master's degree, major in guidance, and later her PhD in educational psychology. So she's very experienced in this topic that we have today. She's also an associate professor at the College of Education for 24 years. But when I see her, she doesn't look at all. She looks very young, which is amazing. And currently, she is also the division chair at the one of two divisions at the College of Education in UP. She is an esteemed academic and well-loved teacher. And her students always say that she's not only a teacher in the classroom, but also in life. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lorelai Vinluan, or as her students call her, Ma'am V. Hi, Ma'am V. Good
Hello, good
afternoon to you.
afternoon. Yeah, good day, sir, and to our listeners.
Thank you so much, Ma'am V, for joining us. Dr.
Thank you.
Lorelai is joining us also from the Philippines, from Manila. And she's here to actually share with us these ideas and these thoughts on, how do we actually have a positive impact using constructive criticism. So thank you so much again, Ma'am V, for joining us today. So this discussion is really very timely, because I guess in the past 2 years, we've really had to adjust uh, in many ways of teaching, right? So we've had to adjust not just in our own teaching styles, but even the medium of teaching. So rather than doing the chalk and talk classroom face to face, we've had to adapt. We've had to use new technologies such as what we're using now, a lot of video conferencing, a lot of virtual meetings, virtual classrooms. And I guess in a way, when we try to provide feedback or we try to, engage with our students, this criticism or, how to give positive or negative feedback to our students, that's one of the, things that a lot of our educators, joining us from all over, probably have had to adjust as well. Because
Mhm.
whereas before in the face-to-face setting, I think it would have been very easy to
Yeah.
just, the nonverbal cues are much more obvious, right? You can
Yes.
see each other, You can feel each other's, what's the attitude of your learners? Are they feeling down after you announce something in the classroom? But how to
Mhm.
simulate that in this virtual environment has been a challenge as well. Regardless, though, I think it's also been very important. How do we actually communicate these kinds of feedback properly, and what effects these have to our learners? So maybe I can start the session by just getting your thoughts on this entire concept of constructive criticism, ma'am, and what is it in the context of education? How do you define constructive criticism in the context of education?
Well, as you have mentioned, it's really building up. So, the goal of teachers nowadays is to really help students learn from not only from their mistakes, but learn everything about life in general. After
Mm,
all, they won't need everything, things that are being read in the book or discussed in the four walls of the classroom or now in the virtual classroom. But they really have to learn how to become a human being, how to be humane, and not just to be, an ordinary person. So in general, we have to tell them that we give teachers do give constructive criticism because this is really needed in life. So this is very important where the teacher really communicates, really reach out to their students that they are not putting them down. Rather, this is
mm,
really to build them up, and not only themselves, but we are members of the community. So if we want a better world, I go as far as that. If we want a better Philippines, a better world, then we have to change ourselves. And how do we go about it? So we look into ourselves, our strengths and our weaknesses. So if we don't accept our weaknesses, what happens? So there, constructive criticism is really, really important.
Well, I like what you said, Ma'am V, right? Because it's not just looking at, the classroom setting itself, whether virtual or face-to-face physical. I hear you saying that we also have to look at the bigger picture, right?
Mhm.
So in our society, in our communities, in whatever countries we're at, how do we
Mhm.
become humane? I like what you said about becoming more human or better human beings. And that includes, as you said, being able to give um, feedback that hopefully builds us up, right? It's not there to put us down. We're here to actually build each other up. But sometimes, it's not always something that we like to hear, right? And I guess this kind of feedback mechanism, as educators, as teachers, the experience of this kind of feedback, of course, our learners have their own lives and their own experiences at family and home life, but when they come to school and make friends and meet their
Mhm.
teachers, right, that's another opportunity for them to experience what is it like to receive this kind of feedback. Wouldn't you say, ma'am?
Um, well, educators or teachers themselves should really know themselves first. Like,
Mm,
how do you really give feedback, and how do your students welcome them? And then, in
mm,
addition to what you have mentioned, teachers should know the background of their students. Say, for instance, if my student is the eldest, for example. So
mm,
I'm pretty sure the eldest daughter or son usually receives the most negative comments from their parents, given that they have more responsibilities than the other siblings. So,
mm,
if I know that my student is the eldest, then I really go very, very gentle, right? But if and when my student is the youngest, then I adjust, because usually youngest students are more carefree than the firstborn.
mm.
So, but of course, that's a general description, but you really have to know your students very well so you can craft the way you will give feedback. But again, explain why the feedback is needed. You have to verbalize, this is not a put down. This is for everyone in the class to build each each and everyone in the classroom. So build yourself up. This is not a put down. You have to really verbalize the line. I keep on repeating the line so that they will realize and accept the fact that I am not that perfect yet. And excellence is the goal, not perfection. And I also share with them my experiences in the past where I also got feedback from my professors, and the attitude should be different. It's like, when I usually tell my class, whenever I receive criticism, I don't feel bad about it. I always take it as a challenge that this is for me to become better, not a bitter person.
Yeah, I like what you said there, Ma'am V. Um, how you were asking, some, I guess, if you're even better adjusted, you're even able to ask for feedback, right, and kind of receive it as well. And like what you were mentioning, it's really there. We're trying to have these honest discussions, that we're not there to deflate their self-esteem, but when
Mhm.
sometimes when our learners or our students, they make mistakes or they do something wrong, how does a teacher take advantage of this as a teachable moment? Meaning, how can an educator ensure that um, it promotes or facilitates constructive criticism and feedback? Or perhaps maybe it's not, right? Because let's take for an example, let's say simple science experiment. The student is given a set of instructions. Let's say it's a chemistry class, for example, and then they're
Mhm.
supposed to, put the right chemicals in the right beaker or flask,
Mhm.
and then they don't follow instructions, and then all of a sudden they mix the chemicals wrong and it bursts into flame. Right? So maybe in that example, um, that scenario, how would you provide, let's say, a constructive criticism to the student that actually, had to go through that? So because of that, there's a lot of smoke in the lab or whatever, and the class had to be paused because they have to clean up the mess. I mean, how would you provide good feedback, or how is that a teachable moment for the learner there?
Yeah, that's very important, right? Usually, the teacher, again, as I have mentioned earlier, you have to know yourself, right?
Mm,
Regulate yourself. So if you know yourself that in that situation you will really say not so good words, then if that's your usual or common reaction, then brace yourself again. You may say words, no, but only in your mind. Do not let it out. So
only in
once
our mind. Okay.
yeah, only in your mind. Regulate. And so, as you have mentioned, that's a learning situation. So, I usually tell teachers to use sandwich approach. And what is that? When you
Mm,
have a sandwich, you have your bread, and then your filling, and then your bread again, right?
mm-hmm.
So, use that as an opportunity for you to show care more than your worry about having the room burned or something. So how will you use sandwich approach in that situation? You're not going to say, hey, you didn't follow everything, that's why it
Mm,
exploded, it's your fault,
yeah.
with matching
Yes.
finger pointing. So we don't do that, but that's the common instinct, right? So I said regulate yourself. You're supposed to do that, you're supposed to say those words, but contain
Mm,
yourself, right? In your mind, you're supposed to say that with the 8 octave thing, right? But please
mm,
regulate yourself. So use the sandwich approach. You tell your student, hey, are you hurt? Okay, when you ask that question,
mm,
you
mm.
are showing concern more than focusing on the mistake, right? But I'm
Okay.
not saying that you are going to let go of the mistake, right? Because you want them to learn that if you don't follow instructions, these things happen. The same thing in
Mm,
real life. When you don't follow instructions, what happens to your cooking? What happens to, let's say for example, electrical wiring when you do this thing? And if you are a doctor, if you don't follow the correct measurement, say for instance of anesthesia, then what happens to your patient? Something like this.
mm,
But
mm,
in that situation that you have mentioned, please show care first. That's the bread, right? Okay, are
Okay.
you hurt? What happened? Okay, and then go through it. Then if your student mentioned, oh mom, we're so sorry, hoping that they would ask for forgiveness. But nevertheless, that's the usual line, right? So if they ask for forgiveness, what are you going to say? Okay, it's all right. Okay, the next time, what do you want? What are you going to do? Right? But of course, before talking about these things, make sure that the students are safe, right? And of course, there's no fire that will happen. So mitigate every thing that will, exaggerate, or let's say that will make the thing complicated. So make everybody safe first, and then that's the time you talk to your students, right?
Mm.
Because in reality, right, when we talk about basic psychology, people don't like criticism because no one wants to be rejected. We want to be
Mm.
always praised. We want to be always accepted, right? So we get depressed, we get angry when something bad was uttered about us. But
Mm.
that's also test when you're a parent or you're a teacher. You may ask this question. You may tell them, "Hey, when somebody tells you you're very ugly, how are you going to answer?" So if you ask that question, then you are empowering the person to accept and reject criticism. You are teaching them how to really think about what is being told about them. See, for example, right? If somebody tells you, sir, Roy, you're so ugly. What are you going to answer? Hey, I put you on the spot. But anyway, how are you going to
uh,
answer?
I think I've been told that a few times before in my life, but maybe when I was much younger, the way I react to something out of the blue like that, I mean, because my personality, I'm actually a very calm person. So I usually don't mind them, especially if I don't really know who they are and why they're saying
Mm,
that. But if I guess it's harder if I know who they are. The way I would react is I try to put humor into it. It's like, oh, you're not so ugly yourself. So it's like I just try to kind of, put some fun into it rather than try to focus on such a negative comment, right?
yeah.
Because there's just a way for us to, lighten the mood. Especially, I know it's very difficult, especially if depending at that point in time. Let's say we're very tired at the end of the day. It's very hard to
Yeah.
catch ourselves and to step back and, as you said, do the sandwich method. And sometimes our emotions kind of get the better of us, and then we just blurt out something that is either defensive or, in our vernacular for our Philippine audiences, parang papatulan mo siya, meaning you
Yeah.
kind of you kind of uh, antagonize or meet the problem in a negative way as well, which never leads to anything good. I've learned, which is why I guess with experience, it comes with experience. I just kind of deflect it and try to insert
Mm,
humor into it. That's kind of how I would handle that.
yeah.
Of course, if it's a valid criticism, then that's different, right? Meaning if it's something that can improve my performance. Let's
Mm,
say if my manner of speaking is not clear, let's say I'm trying to communicate, then I can take that as a constructive criticism rather than a just a whatever out of the blue comment that I can just ignore.
yeah. Sorry, I put you on the spot, but
It's okay,
yeah,
man.
your answer will remind our audience several things. One,
Mm.
you mentioned something about your age, right?
Mm.
So, dear listeners, focus on yourself again. Focus on your students. Remember the social development they are in, the age, and then the needs, the fears, right? So, say for instance, you're still very young and you got that comment, and then know yourself. You're angry and you're hungry, and you came from a family where criticism is always being heard and no affirmations being used, then you will take it really negatively, right? You're hungry
Yes.
and you don't have enough sleep, all the more that it's easy for you to get angry. But
Mm.
another thing that Sir Roy mentioned, it depends who gave me that comment. risks. You also have to think about who these people are, because are they credible enough to give you that comment? And no, if you heard that line, "You're ugly," no, how do we process that? Usually, no, people in general, no, when you hear something not so good, you retaliate. "Oh, you're also
Mm,
ugly," or "You're uglier than I am." That's how we
mm,
react, right? Or should we regulate again? If you have observed, I keep on saying self regulation and knowing yourself. So process it here. You heard it, "You're ugly." Process it here first before you say things. So how's that? Ask yourself, am I really ugly? You can also do compartmentalization. Where am I ugly? I mean, in what aspect of my life I am angry? I am ugly. Sorry, not angry. So maybe is it my hair? So if it's my hair that they don't like, then what are you going to do then? You talk to yourself. Maybe use another shampoo, have another style of haircut. Evaluate yourself rather than retaliate. And then, if it's not really true, then let it out. The thing is, when people say something about us, it's up to us to really process it. It's not really brushing things aside, but give some careful thought about the comments of other people. There might be 1% truth to it, not really 99. So don't focus on the bulk of it, but think about it. Give a careful thought. Because again, think about it as a time for you to really empower yourself again. Be a better person, not a bitter one. So, yes, and then let's look into also the point of view of the person. Let's say the culture, right? Maybe in the Philippines, what is beautiful for us is fair-skinned people, or fair-skinned ladies, for instance. But when you go abroad and have Western people around you, they will really tell Filipinas, for instance. When I went to a conference, they asked me, "How did you do that?" What? They told me that the tanning. Huh? I didn't do any tanning. This is my my complex. And then they said, "Oh, it's really beautiful." See, but in the Philippines, they might tell you you're not that beautiful because you're not that fair skinned. So again, think about who who are telling you the criticism or the feedback. But the word criticism is really negative, the
mm,
connotation. So shall we just use in education feedbacking,
mm.
giving you comments and suggestions for improvement, rather than, "Hey, come on, let's sit down together. We're going to have constructive criticism." Usually, it depends on the culture also of your students. So think about
Yeah.
yourself, think about your students.
Yeah, what comes to mind, Dr. Lorelai, Ma'am V, when you were kind of illustrating this example is very much in the context of our younger learners and students and the effect of bullying or cyberbullying, right? Because I think in this topic, we need to be able to differentiate these so-called judgments, and depending on and how valid is that judgment. So I like what you said, where am I really ugly, am I really this, am I really the thing that this person is saying, and who
Mhm.
is saying it, right? So in terms of, let's say, that context, as educators, we need to be able to support our learners, especially if they're younger, to understand,
Mhm.
to differentiate what is worth giving thought to in terms of,
Mhm.
like, say, a cyberbullying or a judgment like that by a peer. But let me bring it back now to more, let's say, as you said, if it's criticism, it's negative, but the kind of feedback we provide as educators to the output of our students,
Mhm.
specifically on performance based output. Okay, that's the other context. One
Mhm.
context is the value or cultural judgments, but the
Mhm.
other is criticism towards specific performance outputs or expectations. let's say they're writing an English essay, and the grammar is not, the best, or the way they communicated the idea was not, amazing, and then you have to give, as the educator, you have to grade the work. It's really not up to a particular standard, let's say sentence construction, or how to communicate the idea, start, middle, conclusion, whatever framework you use. And by these objective rubrics, it's really an, let's say, a C or an F, meaning it's just barely passing or even a failing paper, right? So how do you provide this criticism to a student who's not performing or underperforming? Let's say using the care the care
Mhm.
sandwich method you're mentioning. Is it
Yeah.
possible to provide performance based feedback or criticism in the care approach that way?
Yes. Again, look into yourself and decide, right? I'm going to
Mm.
be a very good educator. I'm going to use positive feedbacking. If that's your
Mm.
decision, then it has to be seen in your daily work, right? And in everything that you do, especially in giving feedback. In
Mm.
your example, what I'm going to do is, okay, I'll call the student, only two of you. Do not let other people hear what you're going to tell the student, because it might, give more negative feelings about himself, right? Again, the
Mm.
goal is to build up the student. So it should be a one-on-one correspondence,
Right.
one-on-one meeting. Okay, and then your tone of voice, the choices of words, you have to be very, very careful. If it's face to face or even on virtual setup, your gestures, your facial expression should also be regulated. Okay, you're not going to say, "Hey, this is a lousy work, so let's talk about it." That's different, right? Or do it this way. I've seen your work. Come, let's work together. Okay, I'm happy to help you today. And then, when you mention something about grammar, you can again use the sandwich approach, right? You look for the good thing about the work. You can say, your thoughts here are really thought provoking. I find them interesting. Okay, however, this is now the feeling. Let's talk
Mm.
about how to improve this write up all the more. And then the bread, right? The
Mm.
the part of the sandwich. But I really believe that you can make this paper better than this. Okay, so
Mm.
let's work
Mm.
together. Then you go per paragraph, for instance, or you go. I don't know how you do it, but you can have it in general. Use general comments first, like I think you have to add more to this, or usually in thesis writing we do this, right? Or
Mm.
um, get more resources that are more recent. No, you don't say you've used
A super
antiquated
old. Yeah.
sources, right? Jurassic, so that's really a put down. So you say,
Yeah.
okay, kindly use more, maybe 2000 up. No, and when
Mm.
you browse over your references, I've seen that they are quite old, and we can look into some new ones like that, and with a smile. Okay, and
Yeah.
then regarding let's say lopsided sentences, I don't usually say, hey, you have to rewrite this because I don't understand what you want to say. Usually I say, your compound complex sentences are really compound complex for me to understand.
You've
So
compounded the complexity with your
yeah, so
sentence.
let's just break, let's say I'll focus on one sentence. Let's break this down. What do you want to say? Okay, so let's just put it, use simple sentence for one thought. And then what about the next? And then what connector can we use? Is it however, while? What do you want to use in terms of conjunction? So that's
Mm.
how we do it. It's not really focusing on the bad. I'm not saying that always be good, right? But the thing is, we can really express not so good things in a very nice way. Should we
Mm.
decide to be a very good teacher in this way? Um, well, based on my experience, no, this is my 25th year actually in UP. Come
Congratulations,
December
Mampi.
31. I could relate. um, um, Usually, I befriend my students, so it's easy for me to get through. In terms of
Mm,
connection, I can
mm,
always tell them straight where I want them to change, and they understand that it is a motherly thing. So they call me Nanay V also. Nanay. Nanay is
mm,
mother in the Philippines. So they
mm,
see me as someone who cares for them rather than someone who has this rod who will really criticize them. So
mm, mm.
establish that relationship first, and it's very easy for you to get through. I think that's one tip that
Yes.
we can give you.
Yeah, thanks, Ma'am V. So she's very motherly approach, and that's interesting. I just want to note some of the comments here. I'm not sure if we can see it. So I just want to say hi to Mr. Venesio. He's saying, if I am ugly, there will be no handsome person in the world. So it's like, so I like your confidence, Mr. Kodia. I really like your confidence. That's what we need, as educators. We be confident. And I'm sure you're a good-looking man, Mr. Kodia.
Wow,
Okay,
need to see
that's a
you,
great
sir.
way. Yeah, and going back to what you're saying, Dr. Lorla, it's like being able, there's an approach, right? So you can actually mention the critique in a positive way using the sandwich method and still get your point across. And as your approach is very approachable, friendly, connecting with your students, right? And that really works a lot with, let's say, tertiary level students or people who you can value more relational teacher student dynamics. But I guess I also was wondering, let's say for the younger students, and maybe I know you have some slides you may have, just to contextualize. I can ask you to kind of show some of those slides later. You can just go through something you may want to share a bit more. But there's one of the guide questions here that's saying, how can educators design, let's say, more formative assessments that deliver authentic constructive feedback rather than mini judgments that are essentially summative assessments on a more frequent schedule. So I guess what this question is asking is, I like how you made the sandwich method, that you know you're saying that these sentence constructions, what have you, I know you can do better, I know you can communicate this idea better, but this is how specifically in this paragraph it can sound better. So that to me is a good criticism, in the sense that yes, it's negative, so it's not well expressed, the output is not that good, but the feedback you were giving, how can you do it better? And that can help the learner understand how they can improve themselves. And it's a building up type of criticism rather than a putting down.
Mhm. You mentioned the word assessment, right, sir, and the words formative and summative.
Yeah.
Usually, teachers use the summative assessment at the end of the quarter or at
Mm,
the end of the semester, at the end of the school year. However, even in projects that we have, right, it's usually good if we use formative. Now, how is formative assessment done? So again, teachers, ask yourselves, how often can you do this, right? Formative means forming, right? Building, helping your students become better. Um, should it be weekly? Up to you if you can do that. And then you should have the expectations first, right? You have the matrix. What are your expectations, for instance, in an assignment? Would
mm,
you like to have, for example, I have an assignment where they should write something about themselves and apply the theories. So I should have that matrix and mention, like in the matrix, include it in the matrix, like you should use 2 to 3 personality theories, something like that. So
mm,
that expectation is clear, right? So when we check the output, then we count. And then another thing, very specific, right? I
mm,
usually tell my students, please, okay, mention the theorist, the name of the theorist, the tenet or the principle being used, and your experience. Should you need to highlight to make it in italics, it's all right, just do it. And then count the theories in your output first before you submit it to me. Because if you don't do that, then you might get a grade of incomplete. So that's very
Mm,
clear, right? And
mm,
then, yeah, usually my students follow. They italicize, they count. So they tell me, ma'am, I think I used 17, right, out of 25 theories. So that's good. What is my expectation? Only 3 to 4. So, or
mm, mm.
2 to 3. So my student can really tell me, hey, ma'am, I use a lot and it's really good, I think. So they can say, I deserve a grade of 1, right?
Yeah,
Because I
one
use,
being the highest grade, right? Yes.
yeah, the highest grade in the university here.
Yeah.
So the same thing with children. The key here is really communication. What is this that you really want them to accomplish? And then communicate with them. And then may I share with you, as a mother, I usually ask my children, how can I improve as a mother to you on a weekly
Mm,
basis? Okay. Now we can also do the same thing with our students, right? How can I improve as a teacher to you? But how many teachers are really willing to do this? Because,
mm,
well, maybe not so good comments might come up, right? But let me share with you one faculty member of UP whom I interviewed for my dissertation before.
mm,
Um, these are award-winning professors or Metro Bank awardees, UP Gawa Chancellor, no, teacher awardees. So I asked one, sir, what's your secret, right? How did you win these awards? There are a lot. And then, you know what he said? And I learned from him. He said, I usually look at the negative comments in my set or the student evaluation for teachers, which is usually being accomplished by our students at the end of the semester. And
mm.
then, with a grain of salt, I look at each comment and I challenge myself that in the following semester, I will not, no, deliberately, deliberately, I will not do them again. Something like that. So when I heard that, I also learned from him that, okay, negative things will make you a better person. So,
Very, very interesting, Ma'am V, because I wish more institutions and more schools would encourage a way for the students to also share their feedback, and it's not always the case. Not always are teachers able to receive genuine feedback. Sometimes the students, they don't even take it seriously. They'll just write anything, right? But even that also helps our learners train themselves to how to also give constructive criticism and how to give good feedback for the improvement of the educator. So I think that's very important. I just have a couple of other things, ma'am, and perhaps I can bring in one of my colleagues at Akadasia, Mr. Richard Vidal. He's actually a grade 10 science teacher, and he's one of the lead hosts for the Department of Education E2Life program. So they have a regular hosting session for tutorials for science students every Monday. So I'll bring him in just to get some perspectives also on, let's say, the grade 10 crowd. Maybe can I invite Mr. Richard? Mr. Richard, hi, hello.
Hi, sir.
And in
And Mom V, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon,
so
Richard. Thanks for joining us. And I guess while I'm asking you some questions, Richard, maybe Dr. Lorela, you can probably set up one of your slides so that we can share that briefly with the screen. And then now, Richard, let me just ask you, in 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 the discussions, right? Ma'am Lorelai was saying, you know, her approach is really more very friendly, talking to the students. And that's her style of providing criticism. But sometimes, as you know, we have this concept of terror teachers, Richard, if you're familiar, right? Yeah, so the way they deliver criticism is a little bit more forward, right? And it depends on the educator. Some educators, it depends on your personality as a person. Some are friendlier, like Dr. Lorelai. Some are much more straightforward, and they really tell it straight to the student. And I just want to get your thoughts if you've experienced with your grade 10 students. Do they have what they call terror teachers or teachers that are like that? And how do they receive the criticism from these kind of very direct, highly opinionated teachers?
Good afternoon once again, Sir Roy and Mom V. Thank you. I'm really learning a lot from this discussion on constructive criticism and providing positive feedback for our students that actually lands somehow points for positive improvement of our students. Actually, feedbacking for our students, just like what Ma'am V have stated earlier regarding critiquing and feedbacking for our students. We don't call it critiquing anymore, or we don't criticize our students. We provide feedback for them because it's
Mm,
always an effective way on how we can actually help our students improve their work, whether it's for formative or summative assessments or any assignment submission or project submission. Teachers can always provide recommendations for our students improvement through those I think yeah, feedbacking. And for me, I did experience some teachers even now for our students. I think it will not it um will not get lost on this in the system of teaching, especially
mm,
here in the Philippines, terror
mm.
teachers. But
Yes.
I really like the idea of providing more student voices for the evaluation of teachers. When I was teaching in private school way back 5 years ago, yeah,
Mm,
I'm really interested for the feedback that my students will give to me. And first, I really read the comments, the negative. Actually, that's why I I think that's how I improve myself as a teacher, because I
mm,
put myself in the issues of how my students will look me teaching the subjects. So it's very important, and I think it really affects the whole learning of our students whenever they see teachers providing them feedback for their work. And engagement with this feedback actually involve encouragement so that they can be more engaged in their classes. And there are a lot of ideas that showcases that when we tell and we address feedback for our student, actually, it explicitly show how they can actually improve their learning process. And particularly for me earlier, while having my observation for COT, because public school teachers tend to provide classroom observations based on TP, based on PPST, or the standards for teachers here in the Philippines. And one of the feedback that my master teacher and head teacher told me is that I need to provide more praise points for my students for them to be in.
praise points.
Yes,
So when you say praise points, Richard, it's it more positive encouragement you're saying.
yes.
Is that
Positive
okay?
encouragement, giving them an avenue to be acknowledged for their answers. If you
Mm,
ask them something, then they did tell you something, though not directly hitting the direct answer or the right answer of the question, you still acknowledge that they try they try their best to answer your
mm.
inquiries or part of the lesson.
Interesting. Okay, so um, I don't think you're a terror teacher though, Richard. I mean, you don't strike me as one, right? So I guess the feedback that they're saying is, I guess try to give more praise or good job or good effort type of feedback. But I guess just to kind of make the discussion a little interesting, I was trying to cite like the some other teachers, they are able to use negative or more direct or terror approach or scarier approaches in a way to kind of also motivate a learning outcome or some sort of positive response there. And of course each teacher has their own style, right? And
Yes.
um, so it'll really depend on how it is. Dr. Lorelai, Ma'am V,
Yeah.
would you like to share any slide that you would like to kind of go full screen and share relevant, I guess, to this train of thought that we have? And the discussion point is, aside from the care sandwich approach, right? How can we encourage more student participation and ownership of this feedback process. That, even if my terror teacher is telling me something, can the student actually take that as a challenge and a way to improve rather than just a put down?
Oh, yes. I have a lot of slides, but let me just share one for now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is used in parenting, right? But I want educators to look into this. Like, if you don't put your shoes on, you aren't going to the playground. So that has a threat, right? But the word flip is this: first, you put your shoes on, and then we shall go to the playground. So, educators, how will you use your words in encouraging your students without a threat? So, that's one thing. And then, yeah, this is the definition. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, can I go through the slides now?
Um, Ma'am
Or,
V, if it's okay,
yeah,
I want to go back to that one slide. Let's take a little bit of time on that because it's very interesting,
sure. Yeah.
because it's the manner of how you're giving the feedback or giving the assessment. Because as you say, this first sentence, it's like the empty threat. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's like you're scaring the child that
Yes.
we are not going to the playground unless you put on your shoes, right? So the
Mhm.
approach of the feedback is very different from the second part. As you're saying here in the slide, is it's a naturally occurring reward, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you're achieving the same output,
Yes.
which is, in this case, you want the child to wear their shoes so that they can be safe when they're playing in the playground. But the manner in which you're expressing it is, first you put on your shoes and then we can go have fun at the playground, which is the naturally occurring reward, right? So I guess, I don't know how we can tie that into our terror teachers. I know, I remember some of my terror teachers back in school, and they're some of the most unforgettable ones. But especially, I had this terror math teacher in grade 5, and she was just the most direct and said, the answer is wrong. The formula you used is
Oh,
wrong. You need to study harder because you're not doing the work. And because of that teacher, even though she was a terror teacher to me, I really had to study harder, because back then I was trying to get by with, stock knowledge. I wasn't
yes.
really doing that much of the exercises. But when that terror teacher of mine actually told me, but the way she told me was like this. She said, Roy, you're smart naman, or you're smart. It's just that you're lazy or you're not doing enough work. So I think if you did a bit more work and did a lot of preparation, you will ace the next test and you won't make these minor mistakes that I know you wouldn't have made this failing quiz if you just practiced more your math formulas.
Yeah.
And when she gave me that feedback, it was very specific in the sense that I just needed to study the lesson better. I'd not rely on my stock knowledge. And because of that, I was able to do better on the next test. And I remember her because she's a terror teacher. She really scared me when I was a young boy, right? Um, so I think there's a way to provide, although the connotation can be negative, but there's a way to be very direct. But I
Mhm.
like what, Ma'am Lorela, you're saying, be specific with the feedback. So in the sentence construction, do this. In the literary references, you use more than three, so that the
Mhm.
student understands what you're expecting of them. And you can
Yes.
do that whether you're friendly or you're a terror, right? As long as the output is specified and they understand how you want them to respond, right? How you want their output to be in the school work. What are your thoughts on this, ma'am and sir?
Yeah. Let me add to what you have mentioned, right? Even though I have given the matrix or my expectations, it's also important for us teachers to ask them if they really understood everything. You may go through each part of the matrix or your expectations and
Mm,
then ask them, do you have any questions? Let's settle things here. before you do things on your own, so you will not repeat, the requirement. So that's one tip. Another is, when I do check papers, right? Not during the virtual classroom. No, on paper, I don't use red ink pens, because that
Mm,
has a connotation with, when you got your paper and then you have a lot of corrections, so that's traumatic for a person.
mm,
So but that's what I have, experienced also when I was in the elementary level. But when I was teaching, I said I'll change this. Okay, so usually I change just the ink. Say for instance, the student used black, then I'll use blue, something like
blue.
that. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
So if the student use blue, then you use maybe green. Anyway, but don't use red ink. Just try it. It might work. And again, ask the feedback of your students. I usually do this. So when I hand out, for example, I gave back the papers, I usually ask them, how do you feel having read all my comments in blue ink? And then
Okay.
usually they say, yeah, it's all right, ma'am. What about if I use the red ink on the next page, right? That's also trial and error for me. I really experiment, okay? And for the following semester, I change my style. So that's
So
very
that's how you get feedback from the
feedback.
students. You
Yeah.
you 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 really ask them. This is how I've assessed your work. What do you think?
Yes. You have to get it directly from the horse's mouth. Or else
Mm,
you will also be in limbo, telling yourself, hey, I'm a very good teacher already, seasoned.
mm,
So there's nothing to change. No, that should not be our attitude. Even though I've been teaching for, as I've said, 25 years this year, right?
mm.
I know that I still have to change a lot and things to learn.
That's
Yeah.
great. I love that lifelong learning mindset, Dr. Lorelai, Ma'am V. That's fantastic. So we have a few of the questions coming in now from the question and answer. Thank you again to our wonderful audience, our beloved educators, members of Akadasia. You have very interesting questions, and I'm going to go through some of these before we ask. Richard, while I'm going through some of these, are there any insights or kind of ideas you're getting from this topic on constructive criticism that you'd like to share?
Thanks, Roy. Thanks, Sir Roy. Actually, I really like to dwell more on the parenting part, where the
Mm,
slides showcased by Mom V about parenting. It's also associated with similarly associated with our ways on how we actually provide feedback for our students. Ma'am
mm,
V told us earlier that feedback is really an ongoing process. It's an intentional dialogue, particularly that may start with a teacher, but it must not end there, di ba? So we want to identify more how we can actually provide feedback to our students, constructive feedbacking or constructive criticism for our students. We can demonstrate this on how feedback connects with their performance, particularly. So I'm particularly more concerned about their performance, not the appearance of the students, because some teachers are actually not into the work, but on how the students presented their work. Though it is also included in the rubric, for example, in a project or in an assignment, but you will always need to provide feedback based on students' performance. You need to check the understanding of your students. That's actually one of my practice in teaching science. And you offer opportunities for student engagement. I'm an advocate of student engagement. I always want to ask actually what my students want to do, not just because you want to incorporate differentiated instruction in your class because of their different needs and different ability to learn from you. But I really like how Ma'am V uses different color of pens for
yeah.
teaching, because even me, I'm not using red pens. I'm using purple pens because
Purple. Mm,
more it's more light, not like you write something in red pens. It's a bloody mess for students to read sometimes because it's in red pens. Yeah, and I really like the the way how Mom V asked her students about the way on how she teaches her class in English or in literature or in grammar, but I really like to incorporate that also to my class soon because I'm now handling limited face-to-face classes. Thank you.
Exciting. Thanks for that, Richard. So our first question from our Q&A, it's a very interesting question. I hope Ma'am V and Richard, if you want to chime in here, this is a very interesting question. Okay, so I'll just read it word for word. A lot of times when providing constructive criticism to students, teachers tend to treat their students with kid gloves. However, the real world is different. Managers do not treat their workers with kid gloves. So, what should a teacher do that helps students understand clearly that consequences for mistakes in the real world can be severe without necessarily dealing with the students with kid gloves? Okay, so especially applies, I guess, to tertiary level students going on to the workforce as we're preparing them to for the future of work, right? So it's true. When they get into the real world, um, unfortunately, they might encounter managers who are not as motherly or as nice, right? So how do we prepare them for that? How do we prepare them for the real world in that sense?
That question is very important because that is, I don't know if you have heard about anti-fragility in children or
Mm,
anti-fragility in people, right? It's like not really focusing on their weaknesses, but it's really preparing kids or preparing students for the road and not preparing the road for them. I think that's the question
mm,
is all around. So we can also tell our students that we're doing these things, right? Telling you the things that you have to improve on, because in reality, life is like this. May I also add
mm,
that whenever I dismiss my class, this is my line, and you can ask them. No? Usually, I end my class with this line: "Life is unfair. Please make it fair." So there. So
mm,
it's like telling them, no, that this is the reality of life. This is the real world, that it might not really be fair. You're doing good things and yet people do still bad things unto you. What are you going to do then? Still choose to be good. I am for that. I am believing that people can still do good despite bad things that are going to happen to them. So you tell them that life is unfair, um, and please be fair. And then we tell them reality. Actually, sir, I have another slide for that. Reality
sure.
therapy should be
Yeah.
used, right? What is the real thing, right? People can tell you good things about your work, but people can be so mean in giving feedback. So
Mm,
if
yes.
should you receive not so good feedback, how are you going to deal with it? So please, again, I tell my students, know yourself. If you have
Mm,
done given if you have done good, if you have given your best and your best is not good enough for your boss or for your cluster coordinator, then let it be. That is the opinion of your head.
mm,
However, you still have a choice, right? You still fight, fight with your superior, flight, go away, no, if you don't like. But what is the reality? That's why I use reality therapy. In every institution, there's always, in quotation mark, snakes. They are not so good, but that's the reality. So you have to learn how to deal with snakes. You have to deal with not so good people. But I'm not saying that in every institution there will be no good people at all. You'll have both. So you have to deal with them both. So you're going to prepare your students know the real world in much the same way that we do with our children, right? So again, I treat my students as my children, wherein um, for uh, forming their behavior, their thoughts, not only with the contents. I usually tell my students also, you know what, you can read all about the topics in our syllabus in one sitting, knowing how UP students think, right? They're really good cognitively. However, what I usually tell them is the application of what we know. And you might have high IQ, right? But our focus is emotional quotient, adversity quotient, success quotient, and spiritual quotient. So whenever I say this, I am again reminding my students the real world, depending on how you view it, depending on your experiences, past experiences, and what are you experiencing right now, is the world good to you or bad to you? The thing is, you still have to live with it, right? You command yourself, you command your actions. So if some people do bad things to you, how are you going to deal with them? If they're bad,
Yes.
will you play bad too? Or so the same thing with the bosses. If they're not so good, choose. Will you leave that job or take it as a challenge? First, tend first. So fight, flight, and tend. Wait for a while. Let's say for a month, just give your best. And if the boss is still not so good, you can give situations in your class, right? So you can give them real life situations more than discussing only the topic. Say for instance, mathematics. I ask my students, how will you teach math? Many people are afraid of math, right? But you can make your students love math. Then usually my students would ask, how, ma'am? This is how you're going to do it. In math, what do you have? Many, 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 many problems, right? What do you do with a problem in math? You read it very well, over and over, many times over. And then once you understood, you look for the given, right? And then after the given, you look for you formulate the equation and then you solve it, right? And then reduce the lowest terms. And then you can tell your students, hey, this is also what you do in life, right? If you have a problem, think about it many times over. Make sure, right, that you understand your problem and what's the equation, subtraction, addition, what have you, and
Yeah.
then execute it. And then if that doesn't work, try it again. So
Yeah,
that
I
is
like what you said. I like what
right.
you said, Ma'am V, especially when if you're given, let's say, negative criticism, or if the boss is not happy with the output, even though you've given, you think as much as you can. I think what I like what about what you said was, you still have the choice. You knowing yourself as the individual, you still have a choice how to respond. Whether of course it doesn't feel good, right? It can be painful and hurtful sometimes, but the feeling, to separate the feelings from the action, how you respond or what you do, whether you fight or you flight, that is the response that you can have. But I just want to highlight the criticism part, wherein I would like to just highlight is it constructive? Meaning, is the feedback that was coming from the boss or from the teacher or from whoever, right? Is it really helpful? Is it building up? Meaning, did they really point out what was deficient in the output? And for you or for the learner who's receiving this feedback, can I do something about it?
Yeah.
Versus to differentiate that kind of constructive criticism versus, as we know, sometimes life is unfair, right? Ang sabi nga ng ating mga mentioned by our audience, right? But then, do we let it get us down if we know that it is not a valid criticism? If it's just a judgment based on purely feelings and nothing factual and concrete. So what I'm getting from this is we should not let those things get us down because they are not constructive. Hindi naman po sila nakatulong. They did not help us to really come out with a better output or improve ourselves. And in that, we have that choice, right? We really have that choice. Chard, before I go to the next question, do you have any one or two sentences you want to react to this question?
Yeah, thanks, Sir Roy. Actually, I really like how the question tends to portray part of a lesson somehow in real life applications of something, because whenever you teach your students, you need to showcase how this how that particular subject that you are teaching with them can be in a real life situation. Then out of that, they provide you with something substantial. For example, any assessment that you've provided for them, and then you can associate it with real life situation, then it's more easier for me as a teacher to actually point out the the part wherein I can provide them a feedback based on that real life application. I think one way or another, our students, it depends on our students on how they can actually take the feedback or the criticism, just like what you've mentioned, Sir Roy. Because if I can take the if I can take the feedback from someone that I really respect well, for example, my math teacher, whom I know that is someone who's really uh, fluent and efficient in teaching science, I think, or mathematics rather, I think I'll listen to him more and use whatever he provided as a feedback to me to improve my learning process if I'm the student. So it's very important also to those who actually take the feedback. That's the reason why I'm actually contemplating more on the side of our students, because actually in their age, for me, for example, my students are uh, 16 to 18 years old. Actually, they when you look at them, sometimes they don't put on a serious note the feedback that you can provide for them. That's the reason why you need to make a lighter note for their work, but you need to hit hard sometimes for them to improve their for them to improve in their studies. So sometimes
Mm.
it's really a matter of how your students will take actually the feedback that you provide or the critiquing that you provide for them.
Yeah, and I think we shouldn't limit ourselves to just one form of feedback or one form of criticism, right? I mean, you can do praise, you can do that, and if it works and you get better learning outcomes, that's great. But sometimes, if you want to be a little bit stricter or a little bit more straightforward, if that also gets you the learning outcome you're looking for, you can also use that. We shouldn't limit ourselves to, just one or the other. You can use all the tools available. Um, Let me go to a bunch of other questions. They're quite related, and some of them we've answered in our discussion already, but I'll group them. I'll just highlight here this question number 5, which is related to some other ones. Um, the question is, how can a learner understand if it's worth making how can a learner understand the worth of making a positive impact through constructive criticism? Or related to this is, um, what if the student does not have the mental health capacity to accept negative criticism? Or, um, again, going back to question number 5, right? Is it possible that a negative feedback can have a positive result? Right? It's a little bit connected to the first assessment. Is, um, what if the learner, how can we help them understand that it's a criticism? The connotation is it's a little negative, but there can be a positive outcome from that negative assessment or negative feedback. Is that possible?
That is highly possible, but as you are reading the question, I am thinking of how will you know the impact? You know? Sometimes the impact cannot be measured immediately. It might even take years, right? Some students may give you feedback when they're already married, something to that effect, right? So what I'm saying is, whenever a student gets criticism or not so good comments from the teacher, let's just say that the student would feel bad, right? And may I also say, remind everyone that feelings are neither right nor wrong, they just are. So, like connecting to the question earlier about the boss, right? We might feel bad at times, and it's valid. You know, when I say valid, just welcome it, validate it that I feel bad about the comment. I feel not so good. I am depressed, but validate it for quite some time. And then teach your students that, okay, after feeling this way, you have validated it, accepted it, and then what are you going to do next? Should you wallow in your emotion for how long? And then what are you going to do next? Will you accept the challenge of changing or doing things better, or will you just stay there and not do anything? Again, it's your choice. So, um, how do we measure impact? That's why I'm telling you that I often ask my students, how am I doing in my teaching on a weekly basis? So I get feedback immediately. But not all students are very open. They might be very shy to tell you. Again, Filipino culture. It's very difficult for us to give not so good comments, especially to our superior, and they will do it in another way, right? That's why whenever we have this evaluation, that's the time they will tell you, because it's anonymously done. So
Mm.
in that case, then you have to really understand that not everyone can be that honest. The thing is, you are getting even a bit of feedback from your students. Now, what about the impact? As I have mentioned, it's quite difficult to measure impact. Let me ask us, the audience, for example, how do you know the impact of your teaching? Right? Usually we get it from the evaluation. And when we ask our students, when our superior observes us in class, but is it really the totality of what we want to know about us? So again, let's be happy with what we have, right? What we are getting from the feedback through written or through the evaluation forms, through verbal um, feedbacking. And let me also add that when it was still face to face, I usually give, right, um, 5 minutes per student, because in UP we are told to dismiss our class 15 minutes earlier in every class, right? Because the students still need to go to another building. So I use that 15 minutes to be with a student, and then I usually ask them who has no class after this. So let me just talk to you. But I do it intentionally. And your radar teacher should be up all the time. Say, for instance, you have a student who usually dresses up with, sleeveless attire, and then all of a sudden today you have seen this student wearing long sleeves, which really happened to me one time. And then when I saw it was so different, it's not really her, I told myself I have to talk to this student. And then before dismissal, I went directly to her and just asked, "Hey, you must have a presentation this morning, and did you have any report for you to wear such a formal attire?" And then she said, "No, ma'am, I'm just hiding something." And she cried. Then she had bruises all over, done by the boyfriend. Then that's the time you can help, right?
Mm.
So as I've said, it's not really looking into the grades of our students, but again, building them up as a human being. Because once a student is really attuned to himself, I tell them you have to be really in touch with yourself. Whether you be an engineer, a teacher, or what have you have to be very much in touch with yourself. So when we say in touch with yourself, you know your Waterloo, you know your strengths. So if somebody mentions something about your strengths, then okay. But if something mentions about your not so good attribute behavior, then you have to accept it. And again, choose. Will you be better or bitter? Will I change or not? How long should I change? What are the things that I should be doing for me to change? Do I really want to change? These are many questions that a student should be asking. So intentionally do something per class, please. You might be touching only one life of a student, but the ripple effect, think about it. When you change one person, the effect of it might be enormous. You are touching one person with the world in mind. This person will have his work, his family maybe, but still you have contributed something. So that's still
Okay.
feedbacking.
Thank you, Ma'am V. That's very interesting. Just being able to understand how the feedback you provide can also impact the student or the learner that you have, and to know ourselves and know the context of the student. Not all classrooms or classroom sizes may have the luxury of one-on-ones. So maybe I guess my additional input there is to try to just identify the key students and try to set aside some time if you can. I know it's hard because there's so many students, but if you're able to kind of pick and choose, you'll see it naman as they're performing and as you interact with them, whether online or face to face, if they need a little bit of more attention. And just give that just a few minutes just to see how they are, or set aside some time for students to consult you. We've run out of time. I'm so sorry. So let me just get some final words from our panel. Maybe I can start with you, Richard. Just a quick wrap up or one or two sentences on what you think positive impacts of constructive criticism can bring about. And then we'll also have final thoughts from Dr. Lorelai after Richard. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sir Roy. Actually, short note on the part of the question because I really want to emphasize the relationship part to your.
Okay.
For example, Mom V is actually teaching at tertiary students at University of the Philippines. I'm teaching high school, 6 sections, 350 students.
Yeah.
Being patient and befriending them actually takes time. And sometimes I tend to actually know first. For example, as a sleepy student who tends to sleep in my class, I really need to know that someone befriend him and tell him something about his attitude in my class. And then actually, it depends again on his side. But at least I did my part as a teacher to provide my feedback to him, whether he likes it or not. But now I really learn a lot from Mom B regarding about opening our minds, regulating ourselves. Self-regulation is really important for teachers because the reason why we are now teaching positive discipline to our students and to our co-workers in education is actually uh, very timely. And let's process everything that we want to say to our students first. Let's process it and we ask ourselves, those were the things that's actually my take home from this session, especially from Mom V. I really learned a lot. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you, Sir Roy, for this opportunity to actually somehow showcase my practice in teaching high school students.
Thanks, Chard. Dr. Lorelai, final thoughts?
Yeah. Sir, allow me to share my slides again. So, do we still have that time? Sorry.
We have very little time, ma'am. Maybe just one or two sentences just to wrap up.
Oh, okay. Anyway, okay. So, giving feedback is not that easy, but once we have regulated ourselves, once we have really dealt with the goal that we want per student in our class, us being teachers, what's the goal, right? Why did we become teachers? Then that will lead us, in giving good feedback, positive feedback to our students. It may not be very easy for them, to accept everything that we say, but again, the tip is the gentle way. I challenge you, not the negative shouting or the harsh way. Just give it a try for a week and then you'll see the changes. So let me end with a line from Ogmandino's book. You are what you are through your choice alone. So he's the writer of the greatest series, Greater Salesman, right? But that line is from Gift of Akabar. So teachers, would you like to be better or bitter? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ma'am V, Dr. Lorelai. Thank you so much, Richard. So that was a great discussion, super exciting. You'll have a chance to rewatch this. It's going to be on our social media channels, so you can check this out or tell your colleagues or fellow teachers what you think about the session. Just to remind everyone, I'm going to share my screen right now so that for those of you who still do not have a FREEJOO account yet, I'll just walk you through very quickly how to get onto FREEJOO so that you can get your certificate for the course. So as you can see now, this is the FREEJOO platform. But when you first arrive here, So the Akadasia community is a global community of educators, over 160,000 from 35 countries. And we're here to empower educators everywhere and would like to have you join our family. So when you create your account, just make sure when you sign up that you choose the profession correctly. Okay, we still have a lot of people thinking they're students. You can enroll your students here, that's fine. But if you're a teacher, please select the teacher profession so that when you create your account and sign in, you will be greeted with the many features of the FREEJOO platform. So we have Collab Ed, Skill Ed, and Design Ed. So in Collab Ed, in Skill Ed, you will find the course. So if you do a quick search here, if I search for the course here, criticism, okay, or constructive criticism, and if I click search, you will be seeing 3 of our courses here. So for our friends from Indonesia or Vietnam or English, you can select one of these courses and just enroll. Once you enroll, make sure to go through the entire lesson. Okay, so we have our welcome video. We have about 4 main lessons in this topic for constructive criticism. And then here in the first lesson, just make sure on the left side, this is a collapsible menu. Make sure you go through all the topics of the delivering constructive criticism lesson. So there are several topics here. And then as you can see, there will be orange check marks on the left margin to show you that you have finished those topics. And then at the very end, make sure you finish up to the conclusion and reflection. There's some assessments there. Once you've completed all these assessments, there will be an email sent to you where you will have your digital blockchain certificate. So this is a tamper-proof certificate that you will receive for completing the course delivering constructive criticism, which is related to our webinar today. And that will serve as your tamper-proof digital, cannot be changed. You can show this to anybody as a completion certificate for this course. Okay? So there, I'd like to thank again our speakers. Dr. Lorelai, Richard, thanks so much for joining us. And on behalf of the Akadasia team, we're so thankful for having you again here on this fireside chat, this webinar Wednesday. Daghang salamat, maraming salamat po in Filipino. Kamanga for in Vietnamese, and terima kasih Indonesian friends. I saw some of our friends from Africa also. So hello to you and thank you for joining us. We won't be having a webinar next Wednesday. It is Christian Holy Week in the Philippines, so we'll take a short break next week. So our Muslim and Hindi friends, I hope you'll understand. And then the week after, April 20th, will be our next webinar Wednesday. So please register for that. That's about learning skills for educators. Okay, so please join us. Sign up for our April 20 webinar 2 weeks from now. So with that, on behalf of Ma'am V and Richard, I'm Roy Platon for Akadasia. Thank you so much. Bye-bye and have a great day ahead. Thank you so much. Take care.
Hi. I am Jenny and welcome to FREEJOO, the global community of educators. Let me show you why as an educator you should make FREEJOO an important part of your teaching and learning practice. A community of teaching practice is important for any educator. On FREEJOO you will be able to access CollabEd, which is like LinkedIn but for educators. Here you will be able to connect and network with other educators from all around the world. You can build your own community of teaching practice or join one of the many other existing groups and learn and share ideas, lesson plans, etc. with each other. Then, for a more formalized approach to professional development, you can go to SkillEd, which is like Netflix for educators. Here, you will be able to access a wide range of courses designed by global experts that will help you to learn about new pedagogical, technical, and soft skills, all related to 21st century education and the future of work. There are more than 20 courses available for free, and for more advanced level courses, you can upgrade to the Silver membership plan for just $20 per year and get access to all courses designed by Akadasia. The courses are available in English and in several other Asian languages. And what's more, you will receive a free verifiable and tamper-proof digital certificate for each course that you complete. If you have upgraded your membership to the Silver, Gold, or Platinum plans, you also get access to DesignEd, which is like Canva for educators. Here you will find the easiest and fastest way to practice your own instructional design skills and build your own courses. We have pre-integrated several third-party edtech apps like Flipgrid, Canva, Mentimeter, Padlet, H5P, Zoom, etc. right into FREEJOO so you can make your courses engaging and fun for your own learners. As you can see, there is a lot you can do on FREEJOO as an educator. So what are you waiting for? Go to www.freejoo.com and get your very own free lifetime membership today. See you soon on FREEJOO.